Oh, hey, there you are. We've been standing around waiting for you to get here. I thought we were supposed to be installing skid plates on your Tundra today. What? Just me? Okay. I guess just me. Ironman 4x4's premium underbody protection or skid plates, really easy to install on a Tundra. It's not technical. You're just removing the stock splash guard on, really most vehicles. That's all they come with. And then you're just bolting the skid plates back up. If you've got a buddy that wants to help you, it makes it nicer just because he can kind of hold while you're bolting it in. But I've done them all by myself. So yeah, it's not bad at all. One thing, even though my Tundra's on 35s and there's quite a bit of clearance in there, I still put it on jack stands because I want as much room as possible. When you're on a creeper and you're rolling around, you don't want to burn yourself on hot exhaust. And I just think, why not? Give yourself as much room as possible. Plus, our camera guy, well, how do I put this nicely? If he was an Alaskan sled dog, he'd be a husky. Okay, I don't want to go off on a huge rant on this, but I just talked to so many people that are like, hey, how come your skid plates don't allow so you can change your oil filter? The OEM doesn't even do that. If you put a giant hole in here, it would defeat the whole purpose of having underbody armor on your truck. So just don't forget, every time you drive your truck into the dealership to change the oil because you're too fancy to do it yourself, they still have to pull this thing down to change your oil. So, question answered. Okay, so before we get the new stuff in, we got to take the old stuff out. This stock, you could call it a skid plate, I guess, but it's super thin. It's just a splash guard to keep water and crap out. So you just got to pull these two 13 mil bolts. They spin right out. The other thing is always start with the back on your skid plate, because Toyota usually includes these hooks in the front. So when you're at, like the techs at the dealership, when they do this, they pull these two rear 13 mil bolts out. See, and then when you pull the rear bolts out, it just hangs down. You push it up and slide it. I think you slide to the left and the whole thing drops out. See those hooks there? Pretty cool. Look how thin that is though, man. I've had LaCroix cans that are thicker. Next step, now that everything's off, we got to put this thing, it's a central support. It actually looks like that steering wheel on that thing from Tron that they fly around. Wah, 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 wah. Anyways, flip it this way up with that side facing forward. And then what you want to do is see right here where your front differential mounts. One thing I'll note, I got a 1-inch diff drop kit on mine. So if you're running a diff drop, you can go 1 inch and it will not interfere with your Ironman 4x4 premium underbody protection skid plates. You take one of these M10 bolts, which is a 13 millimeter head. You go flat washer, spring washer bolt. I'm just gonna spin this thing down, finger tight. And you can see over here that where your lower control arms, your LCAs, where the mount is, there's 2 holes on each side. This central support bracket has these slotted holes. You line it up there. And now this is the tricky part. You get a couple of these plates. See that? So that it's basically an encapsulated nut that's welded on that side. This is because there's no way, once you fit these bad boys up in here, you're not gonna be able to get a wrench in there. So this little welded on plate is kind of like a built-in wrench. You fit it back there, run your hardware in through the front, and then you can just tighten it from the bolt side. So you want 2 of these big ones, and then you've got 2 of these skinny ones. These are for the M10s, these are for the M8s. Same kind of thing, flat washer, spring washer, bolt head. Hey, you wanna know something kind of interesting about flat washers? So I always knew that you're supposed to, there's basically a kind of a kerf to a flat washer. You kind of have like a rounded smooth side and then a real flat side that's kind of got a sharp edge. The flat side of that washer always goes down or against whatever you're bolting it to, because when you tighten that bolt down, that kerf or that curve in it almost works like its own spring washer. So as you tighten the thing down, it flattens out, provides a little back pressure so it will keep the bolt from loosening up. So we'll start with the passenger side. We'll take the big bolt and the big plate and line it up. Just get it started, and then you can kind of feel, and it grabs a thread. Sweet. So we'll spin that down. And the key here is to kind of leave everything a little bit loose so it can fit. And then we'll jump to the driver's side. See it right there? As you tighten it down, it kind of hits against the frame, and that's why you can tighten it from the bolt side. And then your small plate and your small bolt, they go on the behind it. Same sort of thing. Once you get it started, come on. There, see that? See how this plate fits up against the chassis as you turn it down? And we're going to do the same thing on the passenger side. Then we'll tighten it down. All right, passenger side, that smaller plate fits right up here behind the big fatty one. Try to line it up, catch a thread or two, and you're off to the races. Okay, so now we're going to tighten the fasteners down for the cross support bracket. I recommend just using a 13 millimeter socket on a ratchet for the center one. So we will bolt him down first, because that's the way I think you should do it. Get him snug. Then move to your passenger and driver's side. The rear ones are also 13 millimeters, and we'll tighten those guys down. And you're going to need to use, I mean, I've got like this super long turbo extension because it's just what I grabbed out of my toolbox. But you're going to need some sort of an extension to clear this front of the bracket. So he's tight. Come over here to the passenger side, same thing. Now you might feel that plate twist on you because, again, we don't have a wrench on the nut side. It's got that, welded nut on that plate. So if you feel it kind of twist and hit your frame, now you can torque it down. And the key is, anytime you're using split washers, spring washers, you just want to tighten it down so that it flattens out. You go any tighter and you'll start to rip. You'll start to open it up and rip it apart, and then it's not doing anything. So don't go crazy. All right, now that those are done, grab your 17 millimeter ratcheting wrench, and we can get the front bolts. You want to know something cool about wrenches? See the way the mouth is facing down? That means it's going to tighten the way the mouth faces. So many times I grab ratcheting wrenches and I always have to spin them to see which way. And depending on if you're standing on your head or if you're in Australia or America, things get twisted around and which way your toilet flushes, stuff like that. So if you just remember that whatever way your mouth on your wrench is pointing, it's nodding yes, tighten, yes, I want to tighten this down. Unless your wrench has a selector switch on it, and then you're free to select which way to switch. So you can see you don't have a whole lot of room to work here. That's why a ratcheting wrench makes so much sense, because you can't get it with a socket. You might if you had a teeny little ratchet that you could get a 17 on there. All right, we'll tighten up the front passenger side for this cross support, and then that bracket is done. All right, so moving on, now we have to install the rear support bracket. And if you slide back here to your trans cross member, it's just the next cross member back. Your T-case is sitting right behind it. We are going to take some of those fat plates and big bolts, the big 17s, and you want to insert one of these plates with the flat side towards the rear. It can get a little tricky, but if you can get it started, you can kind of slide it up against the back side of the support. Told you this would be easier with a friend or even an enemy. Your choice. Or even an independent third party. You can invite them to help you too. Spin that guy in. And sweetness, it's your weakness. Now we grab another bolt and another big plate. And we'll do the same thing on this side. So Toyota did a good job by putting a skid plate on the bottom of the T-case, but you don't got a lot of clearance here, so you've got to be very, very delicate getting that in there. Some have said I have the hands of a surgeon and the mind of a child, which is one of my favorite lines from Thunderdome. I suggest you look into it. All right, now that the rear support bracket is tightened down, leave it a little bit loose so you've got some adjustment, and we can go grab our plates. Okay, to fit your front skid plate, you use 3 bolts to bolt it to this radiator support cross member deal right here. Toyota includes a threaded hole on this side and a threaded hole over on this side, but in the center, they didn't. Well, that sucks. And we want an extra mounting point, so great idea. Included in your kit is this Rivnut. Now, we wanted to keep all the bolts the same size, so this Rivnut actually doesn't plug in. So you're going to need to grab a step bit or a drill bit and drill this out. But the way I see it is I'd rather have more meat to greet, so instead of stepping down to a smaller bolt size, it's not going to be as tough. Use the same strong bolts, do a little bit of drilling, it's not the end of the world, and then bang, now you've got all that extra strength and support right where you need it. But Wags, you didn't tell us what size bit we need for the Rivnut to drill the hole out. Well, listen, do you want me to give you a fish or teach you to fish? Come on here. We're trying to increase our brain fluids. 2 ways of doing this. Either take your Rivnut, hold it up against your step bit, and go, okay, that's about the right size. Or 2, there is a hole on that same cross member support where the Rivnut fits in perfect. So grab yourself your step bit or your drill bit, match that size, 1, 2, 3 back from the top, and we'll do that. You can also go slow, 1 step at a time, and just keep checking. So, oh, look at that. Oh, you dirty dog. So how do you actually install the Rivnut once you've got the hole drilled? Well, not everybody knows how to make a Rivnut tool, but you actually don't have to have a special tool at all. All you need is a bolt and an extra nut, and we've supplied you that. So you take your Rivnut, you take one of these 13 millimeter hexed bolts, I think it's an M10. There is a flanged nut. Take your bolt, you take your bolts, take your nuts, spin it on upside down with the flange side towards the bottom of the bolt, like that. Take your Rivnut, kind of looks like Abraham Lincoln's top hat. Probably use them for Monopoly if you wanted. Spin that down. You want to get as much thread down as you can, but you need to leave a little bit of room. Take your 13 mil wrench. I like to use the close end. Hold it like that. Take a 12 mil wrench for this flange nut, and once you get this thing fit up in the hole, you start cranking down on this, and as you tighten it, what it does is the threads that are up in the Rivnut, it's going to draw the top half down, and it will actually squish out. It'll like mushroom out or marshmallow out, this section here. And those little serrated edges The whole thing just squishes out and it locks it in. You're done. And then you can loosen it, take it all out, and then just install the bolt like normal. So you take your nut cert and your tool, which is just a bolt with a nut on it, spin it all down till you've got it like that. Stick it in the hole, grab your wrenches. This is the part that takes a little bit of time and finesse. We are going to keep it in place. So you want to be putting pressure with your thumb to keep it up in place like that. And now we're going to start cranking everything down. It takes a little bit of time. All right, now that our nut cert's installed and ready to rock, we can get this front plate on. So I recommend kind of balancing it and start on the center one. Oh, look at that. Oh, gee, likey. All right, we got that guy there. Then we'll slide back down here and lock this one into place on the center. So I have the torque spec for all of these bolts, but we're going to talk about that later. So stay tuned, because you're going to need to know how to do math or how to hold down the button on your iPhone to activate Siri. Okay, so what do you do about your stock bumper skin here that's hanging down, this plastic piece? Well, we provided some brackets for you. So if you want to go get your own nut certs, you can actually hook them up and they tie in like that. We've got a little bit of hardware. This one in the center does something like this, plugs in there like that. So that's all great and everything. But if you're like me, I don't want to waste a bunch of time on all this super awesome fanciness. So I'm going to take my center deal here, and I'm just going to push on my bumper and flatten it out, and I can get, if you pull back, I can actually just thread it all right in there. It keeps the bumper skin under my license plate nice and tight. It doesn't flop around. And then on these outside tabs, I'm just going to pop those right behind the skid plate and just throw a zip tie around each side. Done. All right, so everything is finger tight, but we're going to leave it loose. Everything's slotted, and it still has a lot of adjustment in it. We want to leave it loose because we're going to fit the rest of the plates. Once we have everything fit, then we'll go back through, lock everything down. It will pull itself together and lock down, rock and roll solid. Okay, so on the back of the front skid plate, the reason why we wanted to work on centers here, you just want to get a few threads on there and let it hang so you can kind of do that. Because when you go to put your middle plate in, that middle plate slides right on top. And see how it's got that slot right there? I start on the side. There you go. Get it slotted in. And now you can kind of push and tighten everything down. And then same thing on the passenger and driver's side. You just want to spin those down to hold this mid plate in place. It will kind of hang off the front, but it shouldn't go anywhere. But I just love how you can already see if you hit a rock or a log or anything, it's just going to hit. Just keep skating right down. Nothing's going to hook up. All right, so the last two fat plates you have with the welded nut on the back, these are going to go up inside your engine cross member. You've got these 3 holes here. This is the driver's side. Make sure this plate is down with the nut up. So we'll actually go like this. It'll fit up into that hole. We'll let it drop. And then you're going to slide it with your finger right here. See how it popped out right there? Come over to the passenger side. Again, we want to push it in so that when it falls, it's going to fall nut up and plate down. There it goes. And we just slide it over. Come on. There you go. Sitting right there. Now, we grab 2 of our big bolts with the 17 mil heads on them. We've got bolt, split washer, flat washer. Now, one little trick, take your other hand, go up on the top side of the cross member, there's a hole, you can stick your finger down and look at that, you can get a hold of it. So when you put your bolt up through here, you can kind of slide it around, look at that. I am a dirty, dirty cheater. Like a glove. Cool, we got that one started. We'll do the one on the other side. Grab yourself a 17 millimeter socket and an extension. Lock onto the head of that bolt, and then you can hold the plate from the top side, and then I just hand tighten it down. Come on. Cool. Get the driver's side too. So if you're working on a garage floor, the easiest way to get these plates is get on your creeper, load the plate in your general groinal girded loinage region, and then slide into place. Have your hardware ready to go. We'll take this last plate, and you can fit it right where you need it. And then you can give it some hip action. All right, utilizing your pelvic strength, you can take the front of the rear plate, and it's tapered to tuck right into the back of the mid plate. Take your big fat bolt with the 17 mil head on it, and we will thread one in here. And this is why we leave all the plates loose, so that you have adjustment, so you can get everything lined up right now. And then at the end, when we torque everything down, the 3-plate system will literally like tuck itself, like suck itself together and become extremely rigid. Kind of like my policy on loaning Greg money. Now we're going to take our smaller 13 mil headed bolts. We got 4 left. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, and quattro. You take the back of the rear plate, hold it up. There we go. All right, all 4 of those are started. Now we will grab a 13 and a 17. Let's tighten up these 4 13s on the back. And then if you remember, we left the 2 big fat 17s that tie the bracket into the frame loose. So once we tighten all this down, it'll all pull together. So you can see here, because we left everything loose, look at how much play, because that's, the brackets are slotted. So you've got a lot of adjustment. So try to find, I try to center it up the best I can. And there is your transmission transfer case mount sitting right here. And that, there's also a little divot that basically shows you where the center of the truck is. So I'm going to put that bracket as dead nut center as I can get it, and then I'm going to get it tightened down. The other trick too is you want to push up on your plates when you're tightening them down, because if you tighten your plates while they're hanging, like in a hanging position, the first time you smash up against something, all of your bolts are going to slip and these plates are going to go smashing into your frame. So if you can, put a little pressure on them, physically and emotionally, and tighten them down. And then they won't move on you. For the driver's side, you're going to have to use a gear wrench, because there's hardly any room in here to, look, I've not very much throw on my wrench. So we're kind of back and forth all over the place, it seems, but there is a little method to the madness here. The very back bracket of the rear plate is all tightened. Now I want to come back to the front, because this center bolt here, that is the center of the truck. That's not going to change. Then I want to come back here and look at the center bolt on my alignment for the front plate, and I'm going to dial that in so it's right in the center of the plate. So then I'm going to tighten that down. Then I'm going to follow the middle of my plate back. Same kind of deal. Make sure that my clearances and spacing are equal. I'll tighten all this up, and then I'll finish by tightening the rear of the middle plate. Then we're done. You can tighten these outer ones down to the correct torque spec, but I'd be careful with this middle one because that's got your nut cert on it. And depending on how well you did an install job, you don't want to twist that. In conclusion, basically all your small bolts need to be torqued down to 18 foot-pounds and the big fatties need to be torqued down to 39 foot-pounds. Get everything torqued down and you're ready to go bash these things up.
Hey, what you thinking about?
I don't know. Truck stuff, I guess.